So, good evening and welcome to Talking V8s. My guest tonight is veteran V8 driver and former V8 chairman Keith Organ.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Welcome to Talking V8s. First and foremost, can you tell me how you first became involved in stock car racing?
The age-old story, the family were involved from a young age, and it's just sort of something I've grown up with. My dad's been going since the 60s. My mum, she used to do a bit of racing in the 70s, and yeah, it's just been something I've been around since I was 2 weeks old. That was when I went to my first meeting at Boston, and just been been around it ever since.
So, dragged into it then.
Dragged into it, literally kicking and screaming.
So, growing up around the stock cars then, who was your favourite driver?
Growing up, it was Paul Harrison, but when I got older, I started to appreciate more John Lund, and who can't love John Lund? You know what I mean? So yeah, as I got older, John Lund was the one I started cheering for and started shouting for.
So your mum used to race in stock cars. Who was in the bangers? So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, she just did a bit of banger racing in the 70s. It was, I think she was just friends with some guys that did it, just racing at club tracks. It wasn't anything significant, but she used to throw a Rover P5 around a field down at Kimbolton. Went and walked around that old track the other day just to have a little mosey around, see what was happening, and beneath all the shrubbery, you can still see a bit of concrete. So yeah,
So
it
a
was
bit
good to have a little.
nostalgic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
found a bit of memorabilia I brought home for my mum, which she loves. So yeah, she didn't do it for long, and she had to stop when my sister got hurt at the track. So yeah, that cut that short. But then she went racing with my dad when they met. So and she I don't know if this is true, but she said she tried to have a go in Frankie Wayne Martini's F1 at one of the Bellevue lady races. I think they called them the Powder Puff Derby. And when my dad said that she used to do bangers, it was an instant no. So
So banned from it from banger
yeah,
racing.
yeah.
Probably worried about the car.
Well, I wouldn't blame him. I mean, I'm worried about her driving now, bless her. But yeah.
So at what point in your life then did you decide to have a go at racing?
Ever since I was a young boy, literally watching videos as they were, on the telly at home. I used to run around the living room pretending I was a stock car as a little toddler, and I think everyone involved in racing wants to have a go at some point, and yeah, I managed to fulfill that dream a few years ago.
So I mean, when you were little then, were you there with dad sorting out, running around after him with spanners and
Well, my dad was always only a spectator, but we used to travel all over the country growing up. My sister used to come with us, my mum. We used to travel as a four. Then my younger sister, she lost interest, and so did my mum at that point. So it
yeah.
was just me and dad, and yeah, it was back in the late 90s, and we started to just keep it local, unfortunately. But now I do most of the driving, so we do what we can now.
So, I mean, you decided to get into racing yourself. So, why did you choose the V8s?
Simply, it was just an easy option because obviously I'd known Guy for a little while at that point, and I can't remember how it come about. That I just ended up using one of his old cars because he got a new car at that point and just hired it out from him for a few meetings, and yeah, and that was that. It was just an easy option. I'd love to have a go in F1. I think everyone would, but space and time and money prohibited that. So V8s was the best option at the time.
So, you had a couple of seasons in the V8s. How did your first few meetings go?
The first meeting was definitely awful. It was wet Northampton. I didn't. I was no good anyway, but it was just awful. I did not enjoy it at all. I ended up totaling the car at the end of the day as well, leaving it a bit of a wreck. So didn't leave a good impression that day. But my second meeting was at Coventry, and I got my first top 10 that day. So that was definitely a big positive and a big boost for me at that time. Yeah, that was great.
So, if your first meeting wasn't so good, then, so what made you continue with that then?
Uh, you just it's like riding a bike, and you've just got to get back on it and have another go. So I'd always wanted to go. I didn't want to let that stop me. So, stock car racing at the end of the day, crashes happen, don't it? So, yeah, I just wanted to get back out there and have another go. And I think it was a month or so later, it was.
So, have you any memorable moments from your time racing?
Scoring my first point at Coventry was definitely a memorable moment. Like I just said, the last year that I raced V8s, I qualified for the World Final. That was definitely memorable. Didn't race the World Final because I withdrew, and that's one of my biggest regrets. But
Right.
yeah, and as Guy told you the other week when he was on here, he told a few stories and a few laughs that we've had along the way, and yeah, we had definitely a lot of funny stories along the way.
Can I ask you why you withdrew from the World Final?
It was the right thing to do at the time. It was the first year I was chairman, and I hadn't raced a world qualifier that year, and it was only at sort of like the last few rows of the grid, and it would have deprived someone of the chance to race on the grid that had done the world qualifiers that year. It just wouldn't have been fair for me to take that place, and being chairman, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. And being chairman as well, you just do not have that time on world final night to commit to racing as well as trying to organise a thing.
Okay.
But even to this day, I still regret it. But I know at the time it was the right thing to do.
So, do you have any specific highlights that stand out?
From racing, rolling over was probably not a highlight, but it's definitely still there in the back of my mind, rolling over and scoring my points at Coventry, and one of the last meetings I did was the Children in Need meeting, and that was my best meeting, and that was definitely my highlight. Even though it was a god awful night, it rained non-stop that night. That was quite a theme when I was racing. It rained a lot. Yeah, that was a brilliant night for me anyway. Don't ask Guy about that night because he had an awful night.
So after finishing your racing, you took on the role of being the V8 chairman. Was that something that you'd planned to do, or what? And what did it involve?
It was never a plan to do that role. It never crossed my mind at all. When I started going V8s with Guy, it was just going with him, having a laugh, and then I raced, and then Guy pushed me to then be on the board because they needed some people. So I joined the board and then become vice chairman. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, I was chairman.
Yeah.
So it never was on the cards. It was never planned. It just sort of happened. And it's hard to explain what the role of chairman is because there is so many layers to that role. It's incredible. It takes over your life, and that's what I found in the end. It just took over your life. You're firefighting all the time. You don't get time to do the good things that you really want to do and try to do. That you're just constantly problems. You've got challenges coming up. You've got issues that you need to resolve. It was non-stop dealing with whatever come up at the time. It's hard to come up with a job description because there's one day you could be sorting out bookings for the next meeting, but then the next day you're sorting out an argument someone had in the pits because of something that happened away from the track. But because it then happens at the track, that's now your problem. And, there's just so many different things that you got to bear in mind, and so many plates that you're spinning just to keep your job going.
So how many years then did your time as chairman last?
It was about 3 years that I did, and 5 in total on the board. But I think I did my fair share.
Long stint. So have you any memories from that time or things that stand out from that time?
My favourite thing from that time was watching the V8s grow. That when I was first on the board, the V8s were going nowhere. They were so stuck in a rut. They were just not getting cars at the track. I went to a weekend meeting at Skegness, and there was 11 cars. I think it was. It was just in such a bad place that when I left, the average turnout was about 33, I think it was
Yeah,
the average per meeting. And the best turnout we had was mid 40s. It was just that was my standout lasting thing I would take away from V8s was being part of watching it grow
yeah,
and becoming a big national formula and recognised on the stock car scene.
sure. So, do you think that you caused any upset during the time with many people?
You can't not, honestly. You don't go into that role looking to upset people, but you can't do the role and make friends. You have
Hmm.
to make decisions that are best for the formula, which will naturally upset a few people, and that did happen a few times. That there was people that tried to have a vote of no confidence against me. There was times where there was a petition trying to get an extraordinary general meeting organized just because you made a decision that at the time was right for the formula, but it didn't sit well with a particular set of drivers because it it didn't benefit them,
Yeah.
which is the role of the committee and the chairman to make decisions that are there to push the formula forward, and that sometimes doesn't make you friends.
So those decisions then, I mean, obviously, you've got a committee, you're the chairman of that committee. So those decisions weren't just made by yourself then, they're actually made by the full board. Is that
Uh,
right?
in general, you make a decision as a committee. The chairman gets the deciding factor
Yeah.
because you're the chairman. Um, Sometimes committee members would just leave you to try and make a decision on your own, and that the idea of the committee is you make a decision as a group and as a collective. You try and push forward, but you're not always going to make a decision that everyone agrees with. Even on your own committee, there'll be someone that doesn't agree with you.
Do you think that leaves you a little bit wide open then for more criticism personally on being the chairman than a committee as a whole? That people come to you and say, "Well, actually, you're the chairman. You made the decision." When actually it's a committee decision.
Yeah,
Did you
100%.
find
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you would have people that would just come straight to you because you're the chairman, you're the front man, and
Yeah,
that's that's how it is. You're just the front man, and you're the one that's steering the ship, and people will naturally gravitate towards you because of the decisions being made. And as long as like people are constructive, you can talk to them. But when they're
yeah,
just there to have an argument, that becomes difficult, and that becomes very draining.
yeah.
It's not something I don't think I couldn't handle. It's just so draining. It's so demoralizing as well because when
Mhm.
you're putting so much time into pushing the sport forward and getting 30 odd cars in, people don't see that because of the decision made last week.
So, would you feel that you found that being the head of a sport is quite a thankless task then?
At the time when you're doing it, it's a thankless task. You people are quick to not give you praise. They will definitely give you feedback on what the things that they think you're doing wrong, and you might be doing things wrong. You're a human being. You're not perfect, but people will naturally give you bad feedback, and
Yeah,
the positive feedback follows when you leave the job. And people are of course welcome to have their opinion on what you're doing, but the thing that I found when I left V8s is people were quick to say, "Oh, you were brilliant at the job. Why have you left? You were so good. Please come back." But where was that 6 months ago?
yeah,
That you know it is what it is, and it's been 5 years now since I did my stint. So time moves on, people move on. So I can handle my heart, say I know I did the job as best as I could, and I couldn't have put any more effort into that job.
yeah. So, if you could go back and change anything from that time as chairman, what would it be?
um Change one thing from when I was chairman. I don't think I would change anything, to be quite honest. I think the actual job that I did, I don't think I would change anything. I think I made decisions that were right at the time, that were best for the formula. Perhaps what I would do differently if I was to do it again is to know when to switch off of an evening. Because what I
Yeah.
found is there was no, the lines got blurred a lot. Like I was going to work 9 till 6, for example. I got up in the morning at 6 o'clock. I would do 3 hours doing V8 stuff, go to work, and then I'll do another 5 hours at home doing more V8 stuff. And that's probably what I would do differently, is learn to switch off.
Yeah. So do you feel that you would rather race or be part of the political side to the racing?
I enjoy what I do now. I really do enjoy what I do now. And if the chance come up to have another go at racing, would I do it? Absolutely. Would I want to do it full time? Probably not. I would rather do what I'm doing now full time and progress more in that role full time.
So why is that?
Um, I did my time as a racer. I can say I got out on track. I lived the dream. Um, I wouldn't want to do it full time. I couldn't commit to that full time. Taking away like the ORCi stuff and the track star stuff that I do, that the, I'm quite happy doing them. And ultimately, one day, if the opportunity presents, I'd love to be a promoter. And I don't think you can race. You can't. I don't think you can be a driver and be the promoter. I don't think that's an easy job to do at all.
No,
And
not
praise to Rob Speak for even attempting it, but it's not a task I want to take on myself.
a lot of juggling, a lot of hard work.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So moving away from racing, about the same time as when you gave up as chairman, you then currently, and you do it now, work at Kings Lynn. What does your role involve there?
When I left being the chairman, I wanted a year off, funnily enough, just to regroup and get myself back together, get my personal life back on track. And then an opportunity presented at Coventry, and I was going to go and do some stuff there. But then obviously we all know what happened there. And then Kings Lynn
Yeah,
come about. They put a post up online saying, "We're looking for volunteers. Come help us," sort of thing. So initially I approached them to help out with their social media and just doing that, because when I was doing V8s, that's probably the thing that I love most, was doing the PR side of things, and probably what people might say I did best when I was there. So I've reached out to Paul Butler, the promoter there, and said, I'd happily do this for you. And that's how it started in 2018. It was, and that role has just gradually got bigger and bigger and snowballed, and just anything that Paul and Graham, the other promoter at Kings Lynn, need a hand with, I'll happily do it. Excuse me. But I've been doing the programs the last year. I do all the online content. I do a lot of the writing of the stories for Kings Lynn. I help out with some of the offline stuff, some press releases to newspapers and things like that. Anything they need a hand with, I'll do it. And
yeah.
when we had World Final a couple of years ago, I had a week off work just to go down the track and help and do anything that needed doing, just because even like for a normal race day, there is just so much that needs doing, and people just need to muck in and crack on with it, because we're all a team.
So would you say that you've got a passion then for that and seeing that success?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was saying with the V8s, I like to have some sort of satisfaction where you can see what you've done and what you've had an effect on, and I like the fact that excuse me, that Kings Lynn's online presence has certainly grown since I've been involved with that, um, and just seeing all the praise and the comments and things like that Kings Lynn get online, it just makes the job so rewarding.
Yeah. So how does your time in V8s then and your role at Kings Lynn compare?
Um, they're a little bit chalk and cheese, really. The V8 role was a lot bigger than the Kings Lynn role. Um, I At the time I enjoyed both equally. Like I enjoyed just what I did in the V8s. I really love what I do at Kings Lynn now. Um, I'll just go back to what I was saying about the time management thing with the V8s. So with Trackstar and Kings Lynn, I can pick my time a bit better, what I do,
Mhm.
when and how I do it. Whereas with the V8s, you're when you get home of an evening, you know that's what you're doing. You're doing
Yeah.
V8. Whereas with the Kings Lynn, I can dip in and out of things as and when I need to do it. When I know I've got a deadline coming up for the program, for example, I know I can work around that. So yeah, yeah. The role at Kings Lynn is easier, I would say, in the sense of you can manage yourself a lot easier.
Also, I think, do you think that your time doing the V8s, being the chairman, and the experience of that has helped your timetable, your work with Kings Lynn as well now?
Yeah, 100%. I learned a lot with the V8 stuff. I learned a lot with that, and even now, some of the skills that I learned there can transfer to the Kings Lynn work. So, yeah, absolutely. That the V8 role set me up for Kings Lynn, definitely.
So when you're not working at a racetrack, what would you say? What's your weekday job?
So I've worked in human resources. I've been doing that for about 10 years now, and I work for a company called M Group Services, which is sort of the parent company for um, a load of different businesses that do utilities and infrastructure, that sort of thing. So I do human resources for that. That keeps me busy as well.
Sounds it. So what do you like to do to relax then?
When the opportunity presents, I will happily sit at home doing nothing. That is my ultimate evening. Would just be just to sit with Netflix and do not a lot. I will relish the opportunity when we can with COVID restrictions just to go away for a weekend with my friends and just do nothing.
I was going to ask you, so, what would your ideal weekend away be, or any other pastimes?
Yeah, absolutely. Just going away with my friends, just having a chilled, relaxing weekend. Um, I don't really have a lot of other hobbies outside of stock cars, but it's just the usual: seeing your family, seeing your friends, going out, having a laugh. I'm as much as I like having time sat at home doing nothing. I'm not often pre-COVID was I sat at home doing nothing. I was
Yeah.
always out with friends and doing things. So yeah, when the opportunity presents, I do like an occasional day of doing nothing, but get me out with my friends outside in the open, just being silly.
So do you think, COVID's had quite a big impact on you then, seeing as, the racing's not been going ahead the same, and the sport as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, as a sport, I think COVID has a huge impact on stock cars. Stock cars, I think, has weathered it a lot more than what other sports have. For example, Speedway.
Hmm.
Speedway have not run at all since 2019, I think now. I don't think
Right.
they even did a season last year. So Speedway is not in a good place. But I really hope they pick up this year because they need it, especially like Kings Lynn. They've got a Speedway team. They need a good year. But I think stock cars has weathered the COVID a lot better than some sports.
Yeah.
Um, I just hope that, come mid-June, we're allowed to run without restrictions because it's the things that the fans don't see that, trying to operate a track during COVID is so hard that, you constantly are being watched by all the various authorities. Kings Lynn, even I think it was October last year, we had visits from the council, the EHOs, even the police turned up. You're
Yeah.
just constantly under the spotlight, and any track that managed to run last year deserves full credit for even being able to open its doors.
Difficult time, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fingers crossed that, the current roadmap allows the tracks to reopen in a 4 or so weeks time. Because I think we all need a bit of racing now, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely get back out there. Can you see yourself ever returning to having any involvement within the V8 formula in the future?
When I left, I never turned my back on V8s. I always left the door open if they needed help or they needed advice. They knew where I was. Would I go back to having any official involvement? I probably wouldn't. That's not because I wouldn't want to. It's just where I'm at now and where I want to go, but it doesn't really fit. So, I, as I said, one day I'd love to be a promoter. Um, and V8s, they're a big challenge as being any chairman of any formula is being a big challenge, and I'd rather have a different challenge or be a promoter.
So how do you see the sport currently?
Um, V8s in terms of V8s, I don't really have a lot to do with V8s anymore, but I've seen the fixture list that they put out this year, and I can honestly say that it looks a great fixture list. And I saw some comments online the other week about where's all the meetings and things like that. V8s do not need more than that amount of meetings at all. When I was chairman, I asked the drivers how many meetings did they want, and that's exactly what they said: 17 to 20 meetings. That's
Yeah.
all V8s need. Um, you know, the formula has gone through peaks and troughs all its life. It will be so successful one year, and then a couple of years later, it's down on its knees again. And I cannot tell you why that is the case. It just needs a bit of stability and a bit of guidance that hopefully Neil and the team can bring this year.
Yeah.
And with this fixture list, hopefully they'll get back to where they need to be and have decent car grids again, because V8 is a great formula and it deserves to be getting 30 odd cars again. The sport as a whole, as I said, COVID has had a big impact. I think it's weathered it quite well. There are a lot of challenges that present to the sport. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with what's been going on behind the scenes and what happened a few years ago, tragically. That still plays a big part in what's going on with the sport, the future of the sport as well. You know, you've got electric cars coming in. It doesn't fit, the sport of stock cars doesn't fit in with the current um, environmentally friendly um, uh, time that the people are living in at the minute. You know, the
Mm.
it it's hard. Like, we need to embrace electric cars, and as sad as it sounds, we do need to embrace it. And what that challenge is going to present us, because that's not going to go away. And stock cars does probably need to clean up its act a little bit,
Do you
unfortunately.
think do you think going to the electric side then in future, I mean, we're away off that yet, but I mean, going to that, I know myself, we're going to a race, it's the engine noise, it's the
Mhm.
smell, it's the
Yeah.
whole, it's which creates the whole atmosphere. Do you think that might detract from it and the appeal?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, we are a long way from electric stock
Yeah.
cars, don't get me wrong, but it's something that we need to think about. And as my role in as ORCi secretary, it's on my to-do list to raise it, in actual fact, that we do need to sort of have a plan of some sort, because
Hmm.
that's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
But will it detract from it? Of course it will. Will people go away from the sport when it becomes electric? If it survives to be electric, yeah, probably will. Um, but will there be a need for people to throw cars around a oval? Yes, there will be. People will want to still get out on a track of some kind, whether it's in an electric car, who knows? But I think, people will always want to throw a car around a track.
I think there's plenty of, spectators that want to see it as well, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
Who would you say are your top three current V8 drivers?
Current drivers. I think you'd be silly not to put Stutbury on that list.
Yeah.
Stutbury has been such a mainstay of the formula, and he's been there and done it all. You can't not include him. I think John Brown, I would probably put on the top drivers list at the minute. He's certainly very quick on his day. He, I think he will be a world champion at some point. Whether that's this year or next, who knows? But he'll be a world champion at some point, I think. And I'd probably put Darren Cottrell in the top drivers as well, because he doesn't win the majors. He hasn't won the majors for a long time, but on his day, you cannot beat Darren Cottrell on shale. He is a demon on shale. And I would put him in one of the top drivers, because you cannot pass him unless you literally launch him into a corner.
So if you had a magic lamp and you've got your three wishes, what would you change, or is there anything that you would change to help the sport along in the next few years?
Um, Sadly, it is what needs changing are things that are out of our control and out of our remit. Like, it's all the costs associated with racing, like the running of the track, the diesel cost of the drivers to get to the track, the cost of insurance, the cost of materials to prepare a track, the maintenance of the track. Costs are just constantly going up, and COVID won't have helped that. That I think we've got a lot of increases coming our way. But the behind the scenes running costs, I think if we could change that, the sport would be in a better place. But unfortunately, that's kind of out of control, unfortunately.
Sure. So this year you took on the role within the ORC. Can you tell us a little what that involves?
Again, much like V8s, really, it's just whatever lands in my inbox, really. Like I've got my phone next to me, sorry, and I can just see notifications popping up constantly of things that I need to add to my to-do list. It's just whatever comes up, and you'll be amazed at what does come up. We've got Autospeed. I've got this trouble with St Day. The St Day track's under threat of redevelopment. I've helped Crispin with a
Right.
few things over the last few days. With some objections and things like that. There's a couple of other issues that I've seen coming today that need looking at. You've got all the ORC membership forms that need looking at, and filing all the sort of day-to-day admin that needs doing. It's just all the sort of back end stuff that people don't really see, all the admin stuff that
Yeah.
you need to do to help keep tracks going, and doing whatever you need to do to help support that. And I've got a long to-do list that I want to help with pushing the ORC forward. I mean, the ORC has had such a negative um, opinion of them over the last few years, sorry, and it's so heartbreaking to see, because when you're involved with a formula, or if you're involved with a track, you know the work that goes in to just open your doors. To then get ripped to shreds because of something, it's just hard to see and hard to take. And I completely understand some guys' opinions of the ORC. Equally, I don't, but I want to push the ORC forwards. I really do. I want to help them. They do an amazing job as it is, but it's what I was saying earlier. You're constantly firefighting. You don't have the time to do all the good things that you want to do. Like when I joined, I had a conversation with Steve Reese. He was like, "I'm so glad you're joining," because he has wanted for so long to set up social media for RRC. He wanted to
Right.
update the website and get that in a better place and things like that. But Steve, bless him, he just doesn't have the time.
Yeah.
He's had so much on his plate the last year, as have so many others within the organisation, that it's you are just constantly trying to keep all your plates spinning and trying to stop them smashing.
Yeah. So if you could pick out three standout chairmen who you feel have carried out their role the best, who would they be?
I put myself on the list. um, I probably wouldn't want to name names, if I'm honest. Like the role of chairman, as I know, everyone has their good and bad qualities, and what they do well, what they don't do well. That to single out three it would be a disservice to them, because I can hand on my heart say that they would have put of their all of their effort into trying to do their best job as they possibly
Mhm.
can. Like Darren Summers, you can't find anyone at the time that was more passionate about V8s than him. You got the Lomaxes that have been there and done that from the start of V8s. You've got Neil now, who's didn't want to be chairman, but he's now that in that role. He's like me. He's just fell into it. But
Yeah.
it's a thankless job that no one wants to do, but everyone will have an opinion on it when you do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So do you feel then that social media is a way forward for the future of the stock cars?
I think social media is probably the biggest and best tool that we have at our disposal at the minute. That you can get a message out to people, and a lot of people, very quickly. That it is probably the best tool we have at our disposal. There is also a lot of downfalls with social media, and people see it all the time with trolling and all the negative comments and things like that. That social media can be our worst own enemy. Like, people shouldn't be naive to think that local authorities don't check social media and check what was going on at a racetrack at a weekend. They do. Trust me, they do.
Right.
Um, and they'll see comments and people putting pictures up and things like that, and then they will quiz a track on what's been going on. I'll give you an example, although it wasn't the council. Kings Lynn Football Club last year got onto the council because they wanted to know why they couldn't operate but we could, you know.
Right.
And that was because they saw what was going on social media, and wanted to know why we could have a crowd but they couldn't. And
Yeah.
they tried to make out we had a lot more people than what we did, but you know, social media can be your downfall.
Yeah.
And you're trying to attract newbies all the time. You've got Bradford, for example. You've got a load of probably new people going to come to the sport through Bradford, and a lot of people returning to the sport through Bradford. That
Yeah.
There'll be comments and things like that appear because of something that's happened at Bradford, or something that people have seen with the work going on at Bradford. Like there was people suggesting that Bradford's not going to have a catch fence or something like that. I saw the other day, and it just snowballed from that. I just thought, if you're a newbie and that's your one snapshot of the sport, they're not going to go. They're not going to
Yeah.
go.
So do you
Social,
think it needs monitoring closely then?
it's hard though, isn't it? Social media, such a free platform that you can moderate as much as you like. It was still, the negative things will still creep in.
Yeah.
And you know, people have the right to opinion, and as long as it's
Yeah.
constructive, they have that right to that opinion. And where do you draw the line at that?
Yeah.
It's hard.
So moving on, who would you say are your top 3 V8 drivers of all time then?
Of all time,
Yeah.
I'd probably put Sutcliffe back in that bracket. I think
Yeah.
he's probably one of the best ever in the sport in V8. Like I said, he's been there, done that. He's won it all, and he's been there a long time as well. You know, V8s has this habit of drivers coming and going all the time. They'll, and that's how it started. So I'm not knocking it. It was designed to be a feeder formula and an economy formula for those that didn't want to do F1. But it's now become this feeder formula from minis to F1s, and
Mhm.
you know, maybe F2s as well. People don't stick around, but Kevin's stuck around, and you can't knock him for that. And he's one of the best in the sport, I would say. Um, Chris Brayshaw, I
Yep.
would say Chris Brayshaw is probably one of the
Has to
top.
be in there, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you can't win 4 on the bounce and not be in that on
Yeah.
that list. Um, it was a shame that he wasn't able to stick around longer, because he might have done 5. Who knows? But yeah, I'd definitely put Chris in that bracket. And Chris Fort as well. I'd put Chris Fort on that list for the similar reasons. Been there, done that. He was, for a time, he was unbeatable in V8s, and that has to be recognised as well. But there's so many good drivers in V8s over the years. You've got Chambers, you've got the Lomaxes, you've got Andy Smith, you've got Ray Witts as well, countless others that you
Mhm.
could call the best of all time. But you know, it's so hard to quantify because they don't stick around too long to
Yeah.
to get that accolade, in my opinion. Even though they're great drivers, they don't stick around too long to get that.
So maybe we need an all-time greatest then.
Potentially, yeah, I'd say that's a job for Guy on the committee.
So what does the future hold for you now?
I don't think in the short term it'll be any different. I'd like to carry on at Trackstar. I'd like to carry on the secretary role. I want to grow and evolve in that. Like I said earlier, maybe one day we'll be a promoter. Who knows? I'd love to do that. So we'll see. We'll see. Get the checkbook out.
So is there anyone you wish to thank or mention lastly?
There's been so many people over the years that have supported me. Like, my committee was so helpful in my time as V8 chairman. You know, Darren Summers was a great mentor, although we fell out. Like, I've got the utmost respect for Darren,
Mm.
and I want to thank him for his time helping me. Um, yeah, anyone that supported me during my time in V8s, and Guy and his family for helping me get out on track. You know, I wouldn't have got out on track without him. So anyone that's supported me and been a help to me, thank you.
So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me this evening. Good luck with that promoter dream. I hope you get there, and
Thank you.
look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye.